I know there's plenty of questions for Kelsey. we'll, start, we'll start with you, Kelsey. Let's see. Will HLS be controlled out of the MCC in Houston or commercial facilities? And if the latter, how will that impact science ops?
Yes, I guess that's what I get for two talks in the same session. Thanks for bearing with me. Yes, so HLS and just surface EVA operations in general will be a partnership, of course, between the flight control team at NASA and at the vendor. But as for the question of whether it will impact science, I'm very glad whoever it was asked that question because I'm happy to say that that's exactly why we developed the science operations structure that we did. So because the science officer is that member of the flight control team, a flight controller responsible for these objectives, it ensures that we are able to be integrated in operations planning and real-time operations in a way that we can ensure science objectives are met. So whoever it was, thanks for teeing me up to make that point.
Can you talk about the plans for calibrating the Artemis 2 camera?
Yes, we have gotten some of our team members to be able to get access to the flight hardware for the mission, and that is the image analysis team that I mentioned earlier. So they have really robust protocols in place for calibrating camera hardware for both Artemis, but also for ISS as well. They have a long and robust history of doing that. So we were fortunate that they were able to get access to that hardware and the calibration information, and we will make that calibration information available as part of the data release process post-mission.
Awesome. There's a question about whether there will be opportunities for external non-NASA scientists to help with Artemis 2.
Yes. Unfortunately, we are not able to solicit external to NASA participants on the Artemis 2 science team. However, we are going to work really hard to get the data out as soon as we possibly can, including data about how the science team operated. So like what our structure was, what our data flow pipelines were, and of course the data itself as soon as possible. So what we're really looking forward to is getting community feedback and input on that data once it's released. We will, of course, publish a preliminary science report, but then open it up and we're really eager to see what you guys are able to do with it.
And do you have a timeline for when that data will get released?
Yes. So I will say that, as I mentioned, we have a number of objectives in Artemis 2 that are sort of exploration capability for future missions. And one of those is data archiving. So we are working with the PDS. We have a data archiving team that is thinking about that. I will say that we will absolutely comply with the SPD 41A policies on getting the data out to the public between 6 and 12 months, no later than 12 months post-mission. And that will include all the data as well as the preliminary science report from the mission. But we're really looking forward to, as you might imagine, these are not operated the same way as perhaps a traditional SMD mission is. And so there are a lot of new complexities that we're learning about that archiving process. And that's going to be really important to set Artemis 3 up for success. So that's a big part of what our team is focusing on. And rest assured, you will see those data as soon as we possibly can get them
out. One last one so far for Kelsey. What resources are or will be available to obtain more granular detail on the science objective?
Yeah, so we have, of course, a full detailed science traceability matrix that will certainly go out after the mission as a part of all that data release that I just mentioned. But we can see what we can do about getting portions or all of it released prior to the mission as well. That STM has been approved by the SMD control board. So we can see what we can do about getting it out earlier, but it will certainly be out after the mission.
Great. Looks like there is one for you, Matthew. For fun, where do the tissue samples come from?
Yeah, so right now they're human donors that there's a apheresis process that a donor will donate platelets, and then from there the science team can create the cell culture line that eventually is incorporated into the tissue chips. So right now they're just donors from the science team, and they know they have some ground data that on that particular cell line that they can compare to the flight. But eventually, the donors, it's open to whatever the beyond Artemis 2 is whatever would be the relevant donor. It doesn't necessarily need to be bone marrow. They can make any kind of tissue. There's lots of tissue chips for brain and lung and different cell types that could be incorporated in future flights.
Very interesting. Our community is learning, is getting to know BPS better, but we are still mostly geologists, so it is really exciting to sort of start to hear about some of these other experiments that we've got going as well. And I think our community would really like to get themselves educated more about these things. So I appreciate you coming today, and you'll be up again later today too to teach them a little more.
Happy to be here.
Jason, can you talk a little bit more about how you interact with our external payload teams?
Yeah, so if you're talking about like during the mission, or are you talking about pre-mission? So there's two different ways, like from the flight control team perspective, during the mission, there's a lot of coordination needed, but depending upon where we are in the mission, whether we're getting ready for the EVA, we have some IVA prep work while the crew's in the vehicle. But the way we coordinate them through is the normal loops that we coordinate in real time. But if it's pre-mission, there's a lot of coordination done between us, a group here, Marshall HP 30, which is where some of the PIMs are located. And the PIM role is to make sure that the PD and the payload meets those dates, that there are certain requirements that the payload has to have, safety reviews, CDR procedure reviews, and they walk them through that. And so then we have positions here, a specialist who then works with the PIMs and with the PDs to make sure we have the right procedures in place, to make sure that we have the right timeline inputs in place. And so there's a lot of communication coordination needed.
Awesome. Oh, we just had another question pop in for you, Jason. Can you compare what was learned from radiation sensors on Artemis 1 with what will be learned from the cell cultures on Artemis 2?
And I'm sorry, could you repeat that question? I didn't hear it.
Can you compare what was learned from the radiation sensors on Artemis 1 with what will be learned from the cell cultures on Artemis 2? Was that supposed to be for Jason or for Matthew?
Yeah, and I appreciate the question. Unfortunately, I don't have the answer. PMOD was not, we were not an ops agent in Artemis 1. Artemis 2 is the first time we're supporting the Artemis mission. And I do not know the answer to that question at this time. I wish I did.
I don't either.
Yeah, I can take a stab at what we're planning on doing with that. So we're not recording our own radiation data on this as part of our payload, but yeah, we're hoping to get that data set for what's available on Artemis 2 instrumentation, just to look at once we build our models. If we see a response, since we're looking at the analysis is going to be done post-flight, so we're looking at the totality of the flight and not an individual timeline throughout. So hopefully we can build a model based on the endpoint to tie and attribute things to radiation, and then eventually compare that to other radiation data sets to be able to predict what biology would do. So this is the first step in building that. And then, looking at a radiation data set from Artemis 1 is one instance where we might be able to compare it to what biology would have experienced on Artemis 1.
There is another question for you, Matthew. Are you doing any digital modeling of the tissues to simulate the impact of deep space environmental conditions?
I'm not myself. I think that is something that the science team the external science community is interested in doing. I don't know how much they've dug into it so far, but yeah, eventually modeling is going to be a big part of this. So not currently, but yeah, it's planned for the future.
Last call for questions. I don't see any more in the IO.
So I got one asked to me privately that I can answer publicly. The question was, is there any particular information on the Space Tango version of the hardware that we're flying? And I just would point people to the Space Tango website. They have a lot of information on the ISS versions of the Cube Labs that they've flown and offering to the public. Where the version that we're flying for Artemis 2, we're at about a CDR level. So there's not a whole lot of detailed information available to the public yet, but there will be pretty soon in the next few months. But in the meantime, there's a lot of information on the versions that they do offer on ISS that you can glean a lot of information from those.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you to all our speakers for this session.